Hi and welcome to the git-python development stream. Today we're going to fix yet another issue in git-python in order to prepare for the next release 0.3.6. This time I think doing issue 201 will be quite nice for us. If it will load eventually, there we go. Because apparently git configs are able to include other configuration files. And this is something we don't currently do. And I guess that's something we should implement right away. Personally, I think that shouldn't be too difficult because the config reader implementation we have is already able to load and merge multiple files. So all we would have to do is, after reading each file, we would have to go in and check for the include section and then read all the path here and add them to the list of files to include. And we should obviously make a cycle check. So as to prevent to get into an endless loop loading config files over and over. That's something we should do. Also, what I would like to do is to find more information about how this is supposed to be implemented. Git config include, because it's a new feature, there must be some documentation somewhere. Stack Overflow. Okay. See here for detailed description of the git change and its edge cases. By the way, a couple of subtleties worth pointing out. No expansion. Okay, so no expansion it is. Relative path or relative to git config file that has the include. Good to know. Makes sense. It suddenly ignores errors. This appears to be by design. Actually, that seems to be all I need to know. Maybe that's just a summary, or that is a summary. Let's just give it a point here. It's just a summary of what's written here. Just trying to read through this quickly, but I'm inclined to just trust what was written there in Stack Overflow. So, is there some cycle? Include cycles are detected. Ah, yeah. So it does cycle checking there, obviously. Everything else would be fatal flaw, I suppose. All right, how do they do it? Cycle. Path is cycle, and then in cycle, the path is, where is it? Include path is git config. There we go. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So let's implement it that way. I think that should be good enough as initial information that we have. So cycle check, no expansion, relative path handling, ignore those that don't exist. Awesome. So we will do traditional test-driven development, obviously, and try to set up our test cases here. I think the easiest, to check that it silently ignores includes that it cannot find. That's something we can easily test by just adding an include section here. doesn't exist.cfg. All right, it's also relative. Let's have an absolute path here. User bin foo doesn't exist. That really shouldn't exist, shouldn't it? And bar, right. I believe that indeed does not exist. And that's already one piece of the puzzle. Because I know that these guys are red, and once we have some implementation of this, it should at least not bother about the file not existing. So that's something we don't have to test in addition to that. And then I know there's some read function here that calls read for each file to be read. And what we could do is just change this loop to simply pop from the array. So then after reading one of these files we can check includes and just push the new files that we've just figured out, that we've just read, push them onto the stack here, which will now be a stack. And we have to be sure that we read it in the right order, so we shouldn't pop from the end, but we should pop from the beginning. That's how I see it right now. And this scene set will just keep track of all the path, I think better absolute path that we have handled so far, so that we don't duplicate our efforts and possibly get into a cycle. Because we also have to notice that we merged this information in, so we could natively get additional or duplicate path here that we just want to ignore. All right, sounds fair. So this is file object, files to read, pop from front. Okay, then we just do it like this. By the way, do we need this for anything else? No, we don't. Files to read, while files to read. And we do support streams here. So these we will just ignore. We will not put them into the set. But this is basically the position place where we use file object to open this. And I think, yeah, we should start right here to actually we shouldn't even push it onto the stack if it's a duplicate. So if we are here, we just proceed as usual and we are good. Then we read it, close this, and then we have a look at the path that we would like to possibly add, even though we do start with files to read, and I guess it would be best if we initialize this scene here, so that even if we pick up some other path here, that we are sure that these are not the files that we've already kind of had in our default set, right? So that's, I believe, important. Even though these paths are possibly not, I mean, they are possibly not, well, they are normalized, I think, because we have a function that creates them. So I'm just thinking if we are doing string comparisons here when checking for set membership, then these string paths are better the right ones. But I believe that's not an issue here, because really we initialize the config reader from paths that are they always absolute? The repo base, get config path as the function, because here we expand. Yeah, here we do a norm path, that's good. Here we should do a norm path too, just in case one of these environment variables here has a non-normalized path in there. And I think from there we can just safely assume we can add these paths correctly. Where's path, norm path, like so. So that shall be an absolute or normalized path. That shall be one. That shall be one. And I'm not quite sure if that will also be, if git-dir is always normalized. And I don't think, no. I mean, here you already see it. It wouldn't necessarily be normalized if we just use the current path that has been passed to us, unless we pre-process it and we do expand path. What does it do? Where's path? Apps path. Let's put a norm path here, and then we are safe here as well. Gee. All right, I think that should be fine. So we should have very nice path now that should be comparable even in our set. No matter what, we could possibly break existing tests, but we'll see about that. That's all right. We will just fix the test then. Okay. Now I'm confident that actually in the config path function we will not have to add another norm path here, because git-dir itself is already guaranteed to be normalized. Is it? I mean, after all, you know, having this kind of dependency, let's finish it up. Let's, you know, find git-dir possibly reads the git file, which could possibly return non-normalized path, which is the case. So here we go again. It even does it recursively. Nice, nice, nice. But I do believe that we should normalize this path at least. And then we should be fine. Personally, I'm not such a huge fan actually of normalizing this, because if the system itself works with unnormalized path all the time, then it's fine, you know, it doesn't have a problem with that. In a way, I'm now changing the code that supplies the configuration path, and I'm kind of involving myself too deeply into other portions that were just fine before. This is something I don't like, so I'd rather, you know, keep the adjustments to a minimum here. Yeah, and just modify get config path where I'm not sure that it's actually normalized. I will just normalize it like so. You know, why should we all of a sudden change the deal here? So that's much better, I think. Good. I can close this one. Back to the configuration implementation. like so. All right. How do we do it? What's the interface here? I think it's section. Has section and then sections. Ah, damn it. I don't know the interface. Config reader. Underneath it's just a Python config parser. So we can just look it up for now. How do we traverse all the items in a section? Sections, add section, has section. I think I should have a function that returns a section for me. No. Items of section. Yeah, that's the function I want. The method, sorry. That's the method I want. Self. Yeah, I should probably check for this. Or catch an exception, but yeah, that's just self has. See, it's not pep8 here, or is it pep8? Has section. It is pep8, kind of. At least in that portion of the code. Config parser implementation is probably one of the most hated ones of mine. I really don't want to use it at all. So it's the include section. And if we have it, we just traverse include path. Okay, I'm fine with using a literal constant here because it's kind of as good as a non-literal one, you know. Defining a constant for this, you know, probably it's not required because this include section is as constant as it can be. I mean, after all, they won't change this. And taking that into consideration, I'm confident this is fine. For each include path in configuration file. And now we have to, we don't expand it, but we have to make it absolute. If os path is abs include path, we make it absolute. And in any case, we normalize it. Because even if we put some strings together here, it could still be unnormalized. And that's something we really want to do. As it's the basis of our string comparison that determines if it goes onto the stack or not. So let's normalize it. Fine. And now, let's make it absolute. So that's based on the directory of the file object that we have. And this will only work, well, if this is not a, if this is the path actually and not a stream. And usually you can't really get the path of streams because a stream can also be just purely in memory, so there is no path. So let's just keep track of this. We assume it is a stream unless it's not a stream. File object. And only then we shall be able to handle includes here. Well, stop. No, actually we can handle includes anyway, but then we would require them to be absolute, right? And if they're not absolute And if we have a stream here, then we have to just skip it silently, like something we can't, we just ignore it because we can't resolve it. And that's kind of the default policy here. If you can't read a file or can't figure out what the path is supposed to mean, skip it. So we do skip it. Don't know the configuration file path. So the configuration file path, well. By itself, I mean, my question is it absolute? Or could it possibly be relative? Answer is, it should always be absolute when looking at the implementation of my own function there, of my own getConfig path function here. But you know what? Better safe than sorry. First of all, let's import OS. And verify this, right? Assert OS path is apps file object. I don't like this file object because most of the time, I mean, it can be two things, right? And I think that's already kind of convenient for testing purposes, but also bad in terms of design to just have one symbol that can represent multiple different types that behave totally differently. This makes programming this more difficult and makes it less descriptive to the code that you have, because this is named file object, but in fact here it's a file path, right? And we know it. But for the uninitiated, it's kind of confusing. Even for me, it will be confusing next time I look at this. So all that said, shall I? Yeah, I could possibly improve this. So let's do this. File path is none. And now that I know it's most likely, I treat it as a file path. If it is not a stream, it's a file path, and then I shall use the file path instead. And I always initialize with none. So this close FP, by the way, is something that I can now deduce from the file path variable. If I had a file path, obviously I know I have to close the if file path, then I know that I have to close my file pointer. Oh, look at that. I also already have this. So maybe I should call this file path right away. File object, we have it a few times. Yeah, let's call this file path right away. We assign a file pointer here in case it's a stream. Yeah, it's still not super nice, but I think at the end of the day it's gonna be easier to read this. So if fp is not actually a stream, then if p has been assigned to file path, which is a file object as well, we overwrite this, but file path is already set to what turned out to be a file path, so we can remove this as well. And now I don't have to do this anymore. Wait. How do I figure out now that the file path was actually a stream? See, because that logic doesn't work anymore. Damn it, I messed up the logic. Yeah, it's like close FD that I need now. Fine, close FD is false. And now we definitely need to close it. If, yeah, that also makes FP, well, it's a file descriptor. And here I call it kind of a file pointer. So let's call it file pointer then. So if we should close our file pointer, we imply that we have a file path. Otherwise, we know that it was a stream. And now we can do this. And we just assert that it's absolute, because that's really what I would expect here. And we just say need absolute path to be sure our scene or cycle check will always work. You see, I put a lot of effort here into this cycle check because I really don't want this to fail occasionally just because there are like unnormalized path in there and things like that. I just want to have a common basis for comparison here, as to be sure that the scene check will definitely and always work as expected. Okay, so this is absolute. Now we can just build our new path, os path dir name of our file path, and we add the relative include path to gain an absolute include path. This one will be normalized, which should be very nicely, or which should help us to nicely check for cycles. If include path was already seen, we just skip it. And I don't warn about cycles and stuff, I just skip it silently, which should be fine. Otherwise, we add it, because we shall skip it in future, and then push it on top of our files to read. Does it have a push? No, sorry, append include path. And that shall be it. So now in theory we should be able to read includes and deal with it properly. Let me recheck the special rules here. I think that should be fine. Yeah, I think that's all implemented, right? Oh no, wait. That's not true. I should also ignore it if it cannot be accessed. So let's try that. If include and seen or OS access include path OS, I think it's read OK. Or if you can't access it, then please skip it. Does ROK exist? I'm not quite sure. Let's check it. Put OS ROK. Okay, that's fine. Good. Now we should be good. So first, let's just see if our normal config tests still work. Oh, there we go. Oh. And we go into a loop ourselves. Oh, it is because it's thinks it's not yet initialized or something, and then it wants to reinitialize its cache. Oh no, wait. So this is something we definitely... Oh. this is sure data present kind of doesn't figure out that data is present. How come? Oh yeah. So this is based on is initialized. So I guess we should set it initialized, because in this function, this read function, we can't actually access the data yet unless we say that it is initialized. So let's do this right away. Let's just claim it's initialized to allow us to read ourselves or our own data without causing a recursion here. Okay, let's try that again. That did still work. That's nice. Let's try the repository test. They might involve some of the configuration implicitly as well, but I kind of expect this to work. So next thing we have is to test for includes. We shall test for cyclic includes and relative and absolute path, and we're kind of duplicating our efforts here, because duplicating it, not really duplicating it. The Git unit tests already test that Git can do it, but we have our own implementation, so we have to verify that we ourselves can do it too. Unfortunately, I don't have shell script based tests here, which I would really like to use. Now I have to do everything in Python, which is usually a bit more cumbersome. Okay, so let's not forget what you have to check. Test cycles, and test relative path. Maybe we can just combine this and have a cycle and relative path and absolute path all in one setup, and we just expect this to be coming together. We will also mark the configuration file so that we put some data in that we can clearly identify as coming from this or that configuration file. And that shall be it. We need to have a repository that we can write, and we do, well, actually we don't need a repository, right? We just need files. Yeah, we just do a config parser test here, git config parser test. So no repository involved, yet we need some space to write to with our W directory. I think we still have to import it. Test lib with our W directory, there we go. And now we just put in some nice configuration files. That's, yeah, you know what? I create some fixtures. I shall create some fixtures that I copy there. Then I read them. Then I will edit the ini files using the config parser implementation. Then I will write them back and reread them with another config parser. So even though that sounds complicated, that would allow me to just keep this test, I think, as clean as possible. Let's do that. Let's have some new fixtures. Config file, git config A, git config B shall be enough. Git config C maybe as well. Yeah, let's do this. Let's have 3 config files. 3 is a good number, isn't it? And git config include base template A. Puts it into the right spot. Yes, thank you. So here we have just our a section with a value, that should be A. And that's really it. You know what? Thinking about it, I think I can just programmatically do this instead, even though, yeah, what do I want? Do I want to programmatically do this? Could easily be done. Even though the linkage of the individual file still has to be done manually. Yeah. So I think code-wise, yeah, I will try to do it in code for now and kill that file later. Okay, let's just do this. Should work. Could also be additional testing for the config parser. Maybe it fails somewhere. So file path A shall be our W directory. Oh yeah, we don't have a nice path implementation, so we have to use OS path join all the time. Just call it file A. And should we have a subdirectory? Doesn't really matter to have a subdirectory, I suppose. Well, wait for it. I think it does matter. Oh, I think I found a bug in the implementation already. Oh, where is it? Because as we merge all the includes into the same file, or into the same data set, basically, we will reread our includes, which is expected, and we are just expected to skip them. But if this include is a relative one, then we would all of a sudden, even though we processed it already, try to reinterpret it to be relative to the file we are currently reading, which will yield a different path, which will make us try to read a different file, which shouldn't be a problem, because if it doesn't exist, we just ignore it. But we would try to read more files that were originally intended. And I think that's a problem that could arise. That's a possible issue here. So how do we fix this? We could just remember we could also put the relative include path on there, on the scene list, and then we will skip it naturally. But, well, I don't think that's the case. That could also lead to other issues, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, the original cause of the issue that I'm seeing now is that we don't keep our individual files separate. We just merge it into the same data set, which will make us forget what we did. And there are many situations which wouldn't allow us to figure out what was right or wrong. But maybe we can be smart. We can be smart about this, because previously merged file could yet again hold a relative include path, which should now indeed be interpreted relative to the file itself. So I think doing this could still be the right thing. Yeah, I mean, has to be the right thing, even though I would like to skip relative include path that I have already seen. But even that I can't do, because, you know, let's just say somebody wants to have a relative include path saying A, and he wants to have this multiple times relative to different nesting levels, then this is totally valid. But I would be tempted to ignore that, or, you know, I don't want to implement it to ignore that. Yeah, so I'm risking possibly including files that shouldn't be included. Unless what I could do, once I have an absolute include path, I could set it. I just change the values. Because then it's clear that this value has already been handled and it will never kind of be ambiguous. However, if I change the value, then all of a sudden when writing this back, if this is a writable thing, then it will change the values too, which is not intended. We can't just, convert path to absolute path and, not tell the user. So that doesn't work. That will not work. Damn it. Yeah, it's kind of a possible issue that probably most people won't notice or won't care about. So I should maybe make a note about this, that this is an issue that I see, and leave it with that. Because anything else, I could temporarily I don't know how the write back works actually, because if you read multiple files, we merge them in. Which file do we write and what do we write then, huh? And where do we write it to? How does that work? Let's have a look. So either, we assume that the files we have been initialized with are actually a single file or a single stream. And only then we will write changes back. So that's good, because this would mean we would not kind of modify. Well, stop, that would mean it. Because if we start out with a single file to read, which has includes, you would still try to write it back. And that's something I guess we shouldn't ever do, because now things go wrong. That's an even more important possible issue, which will definitely be an issue. So we could prevent us from thinking we can write by just adding the include path that we parsed to our actual set of files to read. Oh. And here's another possible bug, because we actually do this already. We change our actual array here, which is a problem. We have to copy this and then possibly set it back, but we can't just... Okay. So if it's not a tuple list, let's just do it like this. Must be a copy, because now we changed this array just as part of our loop. That could have been dangerous. Very dangerous. Everything is passed by reference, nothing is copied. And sure, we have a copy of the path to handle. Thank you, Lint, for telling me what kind of nonsense I was about to write. That's more like it. Okay, but it still doesn't solve the problem, because right now we would write back a file that is totally different. Which basically contains the includes. And I think Git itself doesn't have this problem even. Because only if it wants to read configuration, it merges this, but I kind of automatically write back my stuff in order to allow the Python users to make it easy to write changes back. And that's a huge issue. with includes. Gee. I still don't know how to handle this. Because we must not write back a file if we have included other files. We just cannot do that. I could, I will not append the additional path to my actual variable here. I'll just keep it as it was. I think that's best, but I will make sure that I do not attempt to write anything if we have includes, because that means we possibly merged other stuff in there. And that shouldn't go back in. Interestingly, we kind of assume here that file of files is a single file pointer. How can we do that? I mean, possibly we can have a writable. I think we should definitely do this in our testing here. We should test writable config writers and see what happens then. Yeah, that started out as a seemingly simple feature, but due to the implementation that we have here, it's not that simple anymore, even though I think this can be handled. Yeah. So first of all, I don't want to write stuff back if I do not have a single file here, right? That's for sure. Sure, writable. That's fine. Supposed to be failing, I suppose. So if is instance files of files. If we have multiple ones, list or tuple, then what should we do? Should we bark or should we just... I mean, the user could just have multiple files and have a writable one. I think for now we bark. Let's see if code kind of runs into this already. And I think our own repository code shouldn't run into this. I think so. Okay. How many files do I have? Oh, come on. As you can see, we do not check for iterators. This could break our neck, but I think for the most part, I mean, you should cover most of the stuff by just checking for a list or tuple already. And if there is an iterator in here, we will certainly fail ungracefully. Maybe we just make sure we yeah, we don't do this here. Yeah, forget it. All right. And now, even if we have a single file here, remember we do not append these included file path to our actual internal list. If we have an include here, that will always or should always remain, you will not write it back. So in theory, the user could have removed the include section so we don't see it anymore. But that's kind of the user's deal. The user can't possibly trick us, but if he wants that, he probably has a good reason to do it. So we just check for the section here. If we have a section that is called include, we shall not write. And how do we do it? I think from the user perspective, it's all good. We don't even track if we have changes here, right? So we could possibly just write the same data back, except that we don't write back the comments here, which is also a problem. I mean, come on, there's so many problems with this implementation, because we could write back a file and then strip off all the comments if there was not even a single change. If there was a change, we'll still strip out the comments, but at least write back the change, which is what probably is more important. But still, that is an issue, a possible issue. We should maybe also note this here. Read only if true, may read data. If false, only a single file may be given. We will write back changes. Well, actually we will always write it back. We will write back the file when, oh no, under which circumstances do we write release writes? And when we change the thing. All right. When they happen, or when the config parser is released. This will not happen if files have been included, if other config files. Have been included. Maybe we should also add a flag here that tells us if we should look at this or not. Maybe we should just, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a combination of read only false, and then if read only is false, we might, or the user might want to say that he doesn't want to process includes, as to make sure that his writes still happen. Yeah. I think that could be a good option, because then the user can still make it write back in case we didn't process the includes. And by default this should be true, because that's what users would expect, I suppose. Merge, let's call it merge includes. That is true. You read files mentioned in include sections and merge their contents into ours. This makes it impossible to write back an individual. Configuration file. if you want this anywhere. Thus, if you want to modify a single configuration file, turn this off to leave the original data set unaltered when reading it. Does that make sense? I hope so. Merge includes, we'll just keep this. We have slots here, slots. No, we don't. Fair enough. Self merge includes. Merge includes. So now we will only do this. If we are allowed to. And yeah, let's make a function. Has includes it's kind of our internal one, obviously. If we handle includes, well, does it make sense? We may handle include sections. Sure, if we may handle include sections, either because we are allowed to, or and because they exist. Yeah, it's kind of stating the obvious here. I don't like that. Sometimes it's better not to write a comment if it's so obvious what the code says, right? Anyway, what a nice waste of time. Okay, so now we do it like this, and we just silently ignore this. Should we? I think we should. We should silently ignore this. Maybe have a log or something. Yeah, we have a log. That's something we should do. Has includes. Do we have it here? Log, we do have a log. Awesome. That shall be good enough. Log debug. And we return here. Anything we should return? No. Skipping right back of configuration file as include files were merged in. Set merge includes false to prevent this. Like so. I think. Okay. That seems a bit safer. Let's run on our config tests again. Can import with our W directory. What? Git test lib? Where is it? It's in gitdb test lib. Fair enough. Yeah, actually. Oh, what? Oh, it's actually running here. Haha. And we might have skipping right back. What? Oh. Okay. See, now we have to actually modify. Oh, it has includes, and you know what? It could be that we didn't really include anything. And I think if we did not include anything, we should set this to off, because then this thing can continue and just work. And I'm printing a line number here. Oh my god. This is online, so let's try to get the next release out as soon as possible. That is debug code. Usually you mark debug code with some big comment so that you don't forget it. Oh gee. But maybe that, you know, that rarely occurs. That's why I probably no one noticed that yet. Fine, so that's not so critical. That's good to have found it anyway. Alright, merge includes. Yeah, I think we should definitely turn it off. Oh no, wait, if we turn it off here. Yeah, we turn it off last, right? After reading. So scene. Yeah, scene. Num red include files 0. Let's just count this here. You could also be smart and kind of try to remember the original. Well, we don't want to be smart, we just want to be safe. I don't want to be making this more convoluted than it already is. So if num red include files is 0, then we can as well say that merge includes was off, because it shall have no it doesn't have an effect on us anymore, because nothing happened. If there was no file included, we can safely write back, potentially at least, the configuration file without altering its meaning. Like so. Voila. That does work. I apologize for the noise. There is something going on here that you might or might not hear. I don't know, actually. Let's see. Okay, that's good. Now back to the test. I think now it's time to write the tests. Won't be totally simple to write, but yeah, why not? So here we have template A. We initialize our config parser with it. Just a signify, I think that's fine. Writer. Let's call it config writer. FPA. Read only false. We want to write that back. Merge includes, well, it doesn't really matter to us. And then we can just add a section. CW add section. Can we also just set an option without adding the section first? Does that work? Get value, set value. If not has section, yeah, so we just set options here. Let's do that. Set value, it's called. Oh yeah, that's our own implementation. I think that's something we added just to have some smarter value set and retrieval options here. So set and get option is the stupid one that config parser has, and the set and get value is the slightly smarter one that git-python has. I think that's it. So we set the value here. First we mark it A, section A, option value equals A. This is actually the part we can fully automate, but on the other hand, you know, I could have a function here. Dev write test value config writer value, which is always maybe we'll use this a few times. Over engineering, maybe, but also it makes sure that we are keeping this in sync with the method that is then going to verify this value. So this is value, then the name is value, and the value again. Fine. Okay. So that's our test value to help us identify and verify that this file has possibly been merged, or that all this works as we expect, because we don't really, you know, I think A is going to be the first file that everything gets then merged into. And then we have an include, which points to file B, fpb, file path B, or path join. We don't have OS here, really? Indeed, there is no OS. Now we have it. B. All right. And I think first things first, we write the include file there, and we might, yeah, so let's do this as relative path, and then we put C as absolute path. And last but not least, we put in a cycle. And in these other files, we might put cycles as well. And yeah, we just put cycles in everywhere. Why not? So now we write this one here. Set value, include. And we just call it A. The value doesn't matter at all. Oh, sorry, B. We want to include B here for now. And we make it a relative path. Let's call this path B, just to be a bit more, you know, specific here. And now we make it an absolute path. Include path C and FPC, that is absolute. Last but not least, yeah, let's give it something that doesn't exist. I know we tested this already, but we test it yet again. Invalid foobar. And we don't try for absolute or relative things, we just say, well, it doesn't exist. Foobar definitely isn't there. And then we go on with our cycles. A relative cycle and an absolute cycle. Include relative cycle from A, and that shall be A. And then we have an absolute cycle from A, which shall be FPA. All right, so this is our first file. We can just release the config writer now to trigger a write, and this should definitely have written our file. This path exists FPA. And now we can just prepare the other files, which just point to each other and stuff, similar to what we already had, and of course have some own values. So let's get a new config parser with path FPB, read only is false as well. And then we add the test value, which is the config writer, and the test value is B. Nice. And now the cycles. Okay. Set value, I might just want to copy this here. Include, then we point to A. And as we merge this, we have to at least remember to give it proper names. So relative cycle A to A, A to A, relative cycle B to A, as we point to A here. And we have an absolute cycle B to A, which is FPA. And then we point to a valid file C. Oops. Which has been included already, by the way. Which has been included already. So we wouldn't actually, the cycle check should detect that. We call it relative path C, and then we call it C. Yeah, actually when this happens, I think everything has been included once already, so we don't really, maybe we don't let this guy do C, but we let, let's do this. And we kind of verified that absolute path. Well, let's just do this. Absolute path to C, just for the fun. Absolute path is FPC. Okay. So we have non-existing file, we have plenty of cycles, and now we just have to write that back. Release. And have another one for the C file. And we just put some data in there. It doesn't include anything. FPC, read only is false. Write test value C. All right. And release. And I just assume that if this first release worked, then the other ones will work as well. So I don't test for existence of files. Prepare config file C. Test cycles, test relative path, test write or config write is sure, write back doesn't involve, includes. Yeah, this is something we will also check here, actually. Let's do this right now. But first, first we read back the file. We do it in read-only mode. Config reader is git config parser. We provide it with FPA. Read-only shall be true. And then we verify the values. Verify def check test value, config reader value. And we follow our rules here. Assert config reader get value 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 is value. So that should be true. Now we just check all the 3 test values. For test value in A, B, C, check test value, config reader, and the test value. And for each test to verify, we shall release this one. Even though it shouldn't make the difference, it should also not fail or anything, so that's why we do it. So this basically already makes sure that we have properly included the files. These includes, we will have them all together, so in the end we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 excuse me, 8 include directives here. And I wonder if that's the case. Let's check. Items include, and we should have exactly 8, right? Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe the merge kind of overrides. No, it shouldn't. It should merge the values in. It will just override existing keys or options. Yeah, so I think that is a valid assertion. That should be a valid assertion. Makes sense to me. Okay, now the config writer write back. So now we open up that file. And assure that it just doesn't write back. So that's important. Because we processed includes. Let's do this here. Git config parser. FPA read only false. Process includes merge includes is true though. Okay. And now if we change this, or if we do a release, by the way, maybe it should return something to tell you if it's actually written it or not. This would change our API. Right now release says nothing. Write says nothing. Maybe the user shouldn't have to care. Yeah. Maybe the user shouldn't have to care. I will not change the API of this, even though the return value probably hasn't been used ever by any code in the world. So I can also add a return value without breaking anyone's code, I suppose. But also right now, I know this can be easily added. Right now I'll just verify it kind of physically. So this one should not write back. That's the point. And if I set the value here, I just set the test value D or X or Z, write test value. Sorry, like this, let's write an X here. And we assume that this X has not been written back when we read this one again. So config reader is git config parser fpa read only. Read only is true. And we should not have this value. Assert, how does it work? Get value, does it raise or get section default? If you have a default, return it. But the default must be set. All right. CR get value. Actually, that one should raise now. we could just check the value, and as it doesn't exist, it will actually re-raise the exception. Awesome. So I can just catch this, cell fail unless raises. And right now I don't know what it will raise, so I will just do this. Check test value. That's not supposed to exist. And it's X. Oops. Let's do it like this. Let's check for TVs here. All right. And then, continuing, but we can actually allow the writebacks here. Awesome. So let's do this. Config writer is git config. Oh yeah, we should release this. Should make a difference, but hey, let's do it anyway. It's something that is kind of expected from people now, even though most code won't ever do it and might even work, especially on Python 2.7. On Python 3.4, I don't trust the destructors anymore. That's just a little side note. Oops. So FPA read only is false, and merge includes is false too. Awesome. So now I should be able to write my test value here, write it back, and actually read it. And we don't care, we just merge all the settings in here. Read only is true. And then the test value should be there. And it should not raise or anything. So this still will raise. I expect at least this to fail. So we have to fix this up. Check test value in the config reader here, and the test value that we have, because that should now exist in the file. It's a temporary file anyway, this will be removed afterwards, so I don't care. And that concludes our tests. Let's run it for the first time, huh? Expected all include sections to be merged. So what happened there? How many are we? How many do we have? Nine. Did I miss something here? Why is it 9? Name include. It has its own kind of built-in name there. That sucks. That is annoying. Do I overwrite this at some point? No. Oh, come on. So I'm also getting this shit. If key equals name, see? Key not equals name, so here I explicitly ignore these. Ah. Man. Why is it so shitty? Why doesn't it remove them? So, yeah, should I overwrite this now? I think so. Oh. Thank you, config parser. It's even in config parser of Python 3 here. So yeah, awesome. Thank you. Good. So because I don't want to reproduce all the exception handling that might be there already, I just call the result and then process this. Actually, let's just do it like this. So let's call it, let's process it. That returns a list too. And git config parser self items. Oh yeah, item name, section name. Like so. And for kw in, and return kw tuples if the key is not name. Awesome. Yeah, I don't care that this is not the most efficient implementation ever, because we kind of create two lists here and rebuild the entire list with the tuples and stuff, but yeah, really, I don't care about that. So this one here, we go through, we get a section dig, we kind of do this internally. I just leave this as is. I just want to be sure I don't get name thingies here. So that should work now. Except for fix me, ha. Missing one required argument. Okay, so that is broken for many reasons, but not for the right one. Now we get the error that we would expect, no section error. Self-failowness raises. CP, no section error. Is this something we have? Git config SCP. Yes, that should work. Okay. And maybe that works now. No, what? Where are we? Maybe I'm at the wrong spot here. Test config include 184. Oh yeah, I'm doing it wrong. So that should work better now. It doesn't only work better, it actually works. Awesome. So I am confident that the implementation that we have is correct. Let's run all the tests. Let's run Flake. Most importantly, I expect Flake to bark, because it always barks if I write something. Git config 178, lots of trading white spaces. Yes, you're right. Here we go. Here we go. So two less. Then 359. Too many blank lines. 359. Whoa, sorry for that. Then 384. 384. Oh, trading white space. Here it is. Like so. 408. Here we have white space. Oh no, we don't. So sorry, what again? 408, I think. Oh yeah, here it is, because now things moved around. Let's rerun it. These tests worked. Okay. Now test config 138. Trading white space? No. Oh yeah, there's a missing. Expected one blank line. Fair enough. There you go. 140 is trading white space. 141 that is now. Flake works. The test runs as well. Well, it seems to work. Let's just prepare the commit. And this guy we just kill. It's still there. Let's remove it. Yeah, I think it's more flexible to do this in code after all. And now we should be good. Should I add git-db here? Does that even work? It doesn't work. So a submodule, and yeah, whatever. So let's have one more look. Oh, the submodule changed now. Kind of. That's a git modules file. I can't remember that I changed that one. Maybe some white space change. All right. So that was all added. Quite a lot of code, quite a lot of test code. But it should at least run all the new branches that we have. So our coverage will not decrease at least. All right, this fixes which one? 201. Git config parser now respects and merges. Includes direct, well, include sections. I want to call it a directive, but it's not a directive, it's just a section. Maybe we implement it as described in this article. I can't spell and say something in the same moment. It's really difficult to me. Like so. Thus we care for, thus we handle cycles and what else? Relative and absolute, include path, and write backs in case of writable git config parser instances. Yeah. I always want to hit save here, even though all you have to do is to close the buffer. All right, that seems like a nice commit message, and everything still works. I don't trust the flake, but the flake says you are all right. The flake says you're right. I'm all right. Push it and close our issue on GitHub automatically. I love GitHub for this. It's so nicely integrated. Couldn't be better. And actually, if one wouldn't take 2 hours to fix something, it should automatically update. So I have to refresh this one. And there we go. It's closed. Awesome. Thanks for